as we got a lot to dive into here, John. That's the one thing about the NFL. It consumes you, man. There is constant consumption of material that is very intriguing and interesting to break down, and we will do it right now with John McMullen from 97.3 ESPN.com. And, of course, he covers the NFL nationally at FanRag Sports NFL here on the Sports Bash. John, the Eagles have been silent over recent times, so we'll lead with them as a report from Jimmy Kempski over there says the Eagles may finally cut ties with Jason Kelce. Would that be a surprise to you? I know a lot of people have hinted he hasn't played as well, but would it be a surprise if they actually pulled the trigger?
I don't know if it'll be a surprise. I think you kind of saw the tea leaves early this season when he kind of heard the rumors and the whispers that Isaac Seumalo, their thoughts on him was that his long-term position was going to be center. I think that was the first sort of salvo that made you think they could be at least thinking about moving on from Jason Kelce. And you look at the salary and the fact that this was the second straight subpar season. So you start putting the tea leaves together, and it makes some sense. I think Jason could have, put that on the back burner by playing well, and he did play a little bit better in the second half of the season. But, hey, bottom line is we're talking about 2 NFL seasons now where he's not been a very good center in this league, and he's paid like he's a very good center. So anytime those two sort of trains are on the track ready to collide, there's a very good chance the Eagles move on from Jason Kelce.
So what would the what configuration of the line look like? You looking at Seumalo as the center moving forward here and sticking with Alan Barber as the left guard. Is that kind of what you would foresee based on the current crop of players?
Yeah, short term, that would be the way it went. And we always thought Allen played very well this past season. So they'd be very comfortable with keeping him at left guard. Isaac would be the center in that scenario. Obviously, Brandon Brooks is entrenched at right guard. And then you also talk about the possibility of moving on from Jason Peters. I think something has to be done there as far as the contract and the salary cap number. If he's back, and Doug Peterson has said that he would like him back, and he played very well last season, especially other than the false start penalties, which were certainly an issue. If he's back, he's the left tackle. Lane Johnson's the right tackle. If he's not, Lane flips over to left tackle, and you have Big V at right tackle. So they have some depth, and the young guys they're very high on. So, but there's no question that they think Isaac Seumalo can be a very good player at this league, and they think his best position is going to be center.
And not a huge savings though, right? For Philadelphia if Kelce is gone. I mean, it's like, now is he a post June 1st, or are they going to do something sooner than later?
Well, I think they're going to try to trade him. So I think it could. They're going to save $3.8 million if they just flat out release him. Most of the signing bonus is done, so the date is not going to matter as much. But I do think it could last longer because, as I said, they would like to get something back for him, and that's the best case scenario with any organization, even the Dallas Cowboys. You hear the lip service coming out of Dallas regarding Tony Romo refusing to name Dak Prescott the starter, which is absurd. The only reason they're doing that is the hope that they could garner something in return. And the same will hold true for the Eagles. You'd like to get something, but if you can't and you release them, you're basically saving $3.8 million.
Talking with John McMullen here. So a little bit of Eagles news as some reports. Jimmy Kempski, Philly voice, basically suggesting the Eagles could be ready to pull the trigger on a Jason Kelce. And as you write over at 97.3 ESPN.com, he was the 27th rated center by Pro Football Focus. this year. So did not have a good year, did not have a really good year last year, although the coaches would constantly tell you how smart he was and how good he was within the offense. But it looks like the performance on the field is finally catching up and running thin inside the Eagles coaching staff there. But moving on to some other NFL news and notes here. Let's start with some of these playoff games here, and you got the biggest question really, Jordy Nelson, and whether or not they anticipate him playing on Sunday. Because with all the rib injuries the Eagles have had in recent past, between Vic and obviously Ertz this year, that is not something that you just bounce right back from.
No, he's not going to play. It doesn't matter what the Green Bay Packers say, and they're kind of trying to spin that there's a slight chance he might play. They were saying that last week. He's not going to play, so don't expect Jordy Nelson to be on the field for the NFC Championship game. But the astonishing thing is they haven't missed him at all, and that speaks to the level that Aaron Rodgers is playing at. It's just unbelievable to watch him. He's like watching Steph Curry in his zone right now, making threes and just throwing balls and windows that other quarterbacks can't do it. And right now, if he continues to play at that level, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Atlanta Falcons. But you saw as the game went on against Dallas, which is a much more talented team from 1 through 53, sort of you got to the fourth quarter, you got late, and the Cowboys were leaking oil. The Packers were leaking oil late in that game. And really, if you don't have, that was an egregious time management mistake by Jason Garrett. Not his only one, not the best day for Jason Garrett as a head coach by spiking that football and leaving time on the clock for Aaron Rodgers, because we see it time and time again. You just can't do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about that, especially yesterday, when we were breaking down that game, John, and people talking about that. There are some people suggesting that, Garrett needs to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends how you feel. I've said, when people talked about Coach of the Year, I don't even put Jason Garrett in that conversation, because to me, he's more of a figurehead. So, and that's what Jerry Jones wants. He wants sort of a yes man in that type of position. So it depends what you want. I mean, that's just how the Dallas Cowboys have run their organization recently. So what does he do, really? He's not in charge of the defense. He's not in charge of the offense. So if you have an issue with the game plan, and I am one that had a big issue, you got to start looking at Scott Linehan, because he's the offensive play caller, and he's the guy who really puts together the offensive plan for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep, and that team, that's a team to me that just made huge jumps. They were in terms of where they were a year ago, but really an unfinished product, that Dallas team, right? I mean, they still got a ways to go to be a playoff level defense. That defense simply not good enough.
Well, the defense is not talented enough, and I think that was one of the issues. I mean, even if you have a great defense and you're playing Aaron Rodgers the way he is playing right now, what's your game plan? Your game plan is to keep him on the sidelines in a baseball cap. That's your best way to go about it. And how do you do that? You run the football.
Right. They had the offense to do that.
Exactly. And they didn't do it. And it was astonishing, and they got in a 21-3 hole, and all of a sudden it's looking like a hill that's the size of Mount Everest, and to their credit, they got out of it. And Dak Prescott was tremendous, and Ezekiel Elliott was tremendous in that football game. But their coaching staff let them down in the fact that they went in and they didn't understand, look, it doesn't matter if we're the number one seed. That, to me, is just fan talk, sticking out your chest, having some bluster. They knew how well Aaron Rodgers was playing coming into that game. And if it was going to be a shootout, that was not the position they wanted to be in. And you have to run the football, control the clock, keep the football away from Aaron Rodgers. They didn't do that.
Couple other, we talked about Jordy Nelson. I thought Morgan Burnett, when he went out, that really changed the complexity of that game and how important he'll be if he returns this week.
Yeah, it's important, but let's be honest, that Green Bay defense is not good. And he kind of speak to it. And I think that's kind of what Dallas fell into, sort of the siren song of saying, look, Ladarius Gunther is traveling with Des Bryant. And on paper, that's a disaster. And it was a disaster. But again, that's not how you have to approach beating the Packers, because you don't want to get, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you don't want to get into a shootout with them. You want to beat them in a different fashion. And if they used the running game earlier, I think they win that game by 2 touchdowns, to be honest. I think they win going away. You saw late, the Packers were leaking oil because they just can't stand up defensively against a team with that kind of talent. And I think you'll see that against Atlanta, a team that can play with them in a shootout. You're going to see the same type of thing because the Packers just can't match up with the Falcons defensively.
The Falcons, to me, their defense is, on the same level of, Dallas, somewhere in that range. I mean, they're not that special, right? I mean, can their defense be the difference in this game, though?
Well, you're right. They're nothing special, but they've gotten better. And the difference between them and Dallas is they have good young talent. They have good young players who are getting better. It starts with Vic Beasley up front, but they also have Jones at linebackers gotten better. The last 6 games of the season, they played a lot better statistically. So they might be just good enough to be able to get a stop here and there to where it makes the difference. And that's what I think is going to happen because they're so good offensively. Atlanta, as I said, usually if Rodgers is going to put up 34, well, they're going to win most games. But Atlanta might put up 35. Right. That's how good they are offensively.
I think what we learned, I think in football, we all know the quarterback is so important. But there's this feeling of everybody's got a shot. If you get into the playoffs, you all have a shot. Where in the NBA, it doesn't matter if you make the playoffs. You don't have a shot. The best team is going to win, or one of the 2 best teams. You start to feel more that way in football, that if you don't have the quarterback, yeah, you're in there. But if you don't have the quarterback, it's akin to the NBA where the superstars win, the quarterbacks win, and if you don't have one, you don't have a shot.
Well, it seems to be getting closer to that. It certainly is that way this year. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Final Four. It's Rodgers versus Ryan, who's going to be the MVP, Matt Ryan most likely, and obviously on the other side, it's Brady versus Roethlisberger.
Well, this is a thought from something that I saw the other day. You might have seen it too. That since 2003, it's been Brady, Ben, Peyton. Those 3, and Flacco the 1 year. The only 4 quarterbacks in the AFC that have been to a Super Bowl since 2003.
Yeah, and you're right. But certainly, I mean, when you look at a player like Brady, obviously a lot of that is the Patriots, whose success has been outrageous since the 2 of those, Brady and Belichick, have teamed up in 2001. I believe it is. They're 16-3 in Foxborough in the playoffs. The number of championship game appearances, the number of Super Bowl appearances. I mean, when you have that kind of team dominating, obviously it's going to skew the statistics a little bit. I'm not sure if you're going to see that repeated anytime soon, simply because the era of free agency, and that's why I've always said that to me, Bill Belichick is the best coach in NFL history because he's been able to do it. Other guys have done it, the Knowles, the Shulas. You go back to the 70s, those legendary coaches. But it was a different time where you got a core group of talent together for a decade, and you knew you were going to have them. In this era of free agency, you have such drastic change from season to season, except at quarterback for them and coach, and they've been able to be great throughout it. So it's a testament. I don't know. I think it has more to do with that than just the great quarterbacks. And I say that for the reason that, hey, Pittsburgh is there, but Ben has not played well, really, in either game. He didn't play well against Miami. He didn't play well against Kansas City. And I think a lot more of their run has to do with Le'Veon Bell than Ben Roethlisberger. And Brady, by the way, had his worst game of the year against the Houston Texans, who had the number one defense, but certainly was not a great playoff team. So those guys aren't really playing that well at this particular time. Now, Rodgers lights out. Matt Ryan playing tremendously. So on the NFC side, it's been about the quarterbacks, but it really hasn't been about the quarterbacks on the AFC side.
No, you're right in those games, and I kind of broke that down, in fact. But you can adversely look at Brady didn't play his best game, but Osweiler's just simply not good enough to beat you. Same thing with Kansas City. Ben didn't win them the game, but Smith is not good enough to win for Kansas City, in a game of that magnitude.
Well, yeah, you can argue, but then again, if Eric Fisher doesn't hold, it's a tie game. Who knows what happens in overtime? And then I agree with you. Then Alex Smith marches on, but he's probably not good enough to win in Foxborough. So that I don't necessarily disagree with.
Right. He's akin to, hey, Dalton's a nice player, not good enough. I mean, there's a lot of these guys, Alex Smith, they're all over the league that they're good. They can win 12 games. They can get you to the playoffs. But when you need that extra oomph, that's where the separation is evident, it seems like, over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I don't disagree because I look at Green Bay and I say that's not a good football team. It's well, it is. I mean, it's not a great football team. It's a good football team with a great quarterback. It's not tremendously talented from 1 through 53, whereas Dallas does have a ton of talent, especially offensively. But yet they're the ones playing this week, and it's because of the quarterback.
John, you look at real quick on the Patriots here. What do they do with their defensive personnel for Le'Veon Bell?
Well, the guy set franchise records in back-to-back weeks for most rushing yards in the postseason. So, he's playing at a high level. And that's not a run-in-the-mill franchise, obviously, Pittsburgh Steelers. When you think about Franco Harris, Jerome Bettis back in the day. So that speaks to how well Le'Veon Bell is playing. Everyone talks about his patience, and that's a part of it. And I don't know if they stop him. He's probably going to get 140 rushing yards, and that's going to make it difficult. But the Patriots have proved time and time again they can beat you in so many different ways, and they can give up that kind of rushing yards. They can outscore you. They might turn the football over. What we do know is Bill Belichick is going to throw something at Le'Veon Bell that he's not used to seeing, because New England is the one team in this league that will do different things from week to week. We always talk about, are you a 4-3 team? Are you a 3-4 team? What do you do defensively? Well, the Patriots morph from week to week, depending on the opposition. And the only team in football that does it. And they will have a plan. I don't know if it'll be good enough, because if you have a player of that level playing that well, he's going to get his. Doesn't mean New England's going to lose the game, though.
Can they get to Brady? I mean, isn't that the biggest factor here? Do the Steelers have a good enough defense to get to Brady? I mean, Houston, you would think, is a better defense than Pittsburgh. And, yeah, Brady didn't play well, but can Pittsburgh get to Brady?
No, I mean, Houston is a better defense than Pittsburgh, and they certainly have better pass rushers with Jadeveon Clowney, Whitney Merciless, and they are better defensively. And that's as bad as Tom Brady's going to play. And they still win the game going away. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Houston's simply not well-rounded enough to build on the turnovers they were able to get. I mean, think about Mike. Tom Brady breaks Nick Foles' record for 28 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the regular season, 413 passes, I think. And he throws 2 interceptions against Houston. I mean, he's not going to – that's as good as it gets defensively against Tom Brady, and they still win the football game going away. So that's one of the issues you have, and it's one of the things Pittsburgh has to deal with. If they are able to win the game, they're just going to have to do it in a well-rounded fashion. They're going to have to score. And certainly 6 field goals versus no touchdowns like they had against Kansas City is not going to be good enough. They're going to have to score 7s instead of 3s. And if they do win the game, I think they're going to have to win a shootout.
There's a lot of, you would think in this round, the 4 quarterbacks left, it's pretty equal. You almost cancel the quarterbacks out, and then you wonder, what do you like about these teams as their secondary strength? That's pretty much almost how you would come up with who you like to win these games.
Yeah, I mean, as good as they are, and as I said, I'm not going to cancel out. I think Matt Ryan's going to win the MVP, and I'm still not canceling it out because that's how well Rodgers is playing. Same thing on the AFC. As good as Ben Roethlisberger is, I don't think it cancels out because Tom Brady could be, if not the best quarterback of all time, certainly in the top 2 or 3. So I do think those 2 particular teams have an edge at that position, even though the other guys are great. Now, that said, I think Atlanta, I just think this is their year. I think they're so good offensively. How do you stop them? You saw, I mean, as good as Dez Bryant is, again, we're watching Ladarius Gunther travel with Dez Bryant, which is a disaster. It gets even worse against Julio Jones. I mean, how do you stop that? And then you talk about their 2-headed running game, the fact that their offensive line is one of the only in football that have played all 16 games together. I think they're underrated. People don't realize how good they are. And the fact that Matt Ryan is playing at a high level. I don't know how Green Bay's defense stops them from scoring 40 points. And as good as Rodgers is he going to get to 41? He could. He could. But I think Atlanta has just enough defensively, whether it's Vic Beasley, whether it's Neal in the defensive secondary, whether it's Ricardo Allen. They have just enough where it might be an AFL, sort of like an arena game, where you get one stop and it makes the difference in the game.
That should be fun. Enjoy the games. I will not be here for them, but hopefully I might be back in time for the late game, I think. But I'm probably going to miss that early game at 2 o'clock. But I'll live vicariously through you, John.
I'd rather be in Mexico.
Dominican.
So you're okay.
Yeah. So,
gotcha. I thought you were going to Mexico.
Yep. Punta Cana, leaving about 10 hours from now. See you later.
Enjoy yourself, buddy.
Take care, pal.
Bye.